Welcome back to EDH on a Budget. I'm Iceman, and today we're going to be going over Finishers Part 2. By finishers, I mean cards that can end the game the turn you play them, and that's ideally. If not, then definitely by the next turn. So we're going to go over cards that are mostly under $2. First up, we have Kamahl, Heart of Krosa. This is a legendary creature, human druid, with 5/5 stats. It costs $1.25 according to TCG Player, and the mana cost is 6 green, which is high, but most finishers do cost about 6 to 10 mana, from what I found. The text box says at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. And you have the ability to pay 1 and a green until end of turn. Target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. It's still a land. So there's a lot going on here to unpack. First up, it's giving the +3/+3 and trample every turn. So even if you are not successful the first time you attack, as long as this creature's still here the next time, it will still give those buffs. The unfortunate thing is if Kamahl dies, then that buff goes away if he dies before combat. Once he enters combat, then that buff will stay with the creatures even if he dies, so that is nice. Turning lands into creatures is not usually what you want to do, but considering the buff this gives, it may not be a bad idea, especially because it gives them vigilance, so they won't tap for, and you can still tap them for mana, and indestructible, so they're pretty safe in combat. Next up, we have Jazal Goldmane, which costs about 10 cents. It's a legendary creature, cat warrior with 4/4 stats, and it costs 2 white. Has first strike, and pay 3 white. Attacking creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So this is like the closest you get to Craterhoof, because it is a buff that goes to all your creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures. I'm pretty sure Craterhoof gives a buff for just each creature, and it also gives trample. This one does not give trample, so you do have to find a workaround with that. But the instant speed of this, being able to activate this after blockers are declared or not declared, is pretty sweet, because they're just going to have to assume if you have 5 mana up that you could wipe them out by attacking them with your small creatures that suddenly become massive. This is not a tap ability, so you can play this multiple times in one turn. So it does have the ability to give even more power than a Craterhoof that way. More than likely, Jazal would have to stick around for more than a turn to be able to activate that ability twice, so. Next up, we have a card that has only been printed once, Dragonshift. It is a 23-cent card. It's an instant. Costs 1 blue, red. And it says, until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a 4/4 blue and red dragon, loses all abilities, and gains flying. It also has overload for 3 blue, red. You may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So basically, you have the options of doing one creature, becoming a 4/4 dragon with flying, and losing its abilities until the end of turn, or all of your creatures. So the finisher part of this would be the 7 mana, and you're going to want this in decks that create lots of tokens. I know a lot of people think Spellslinger for blue and red colors, but there's definitely a lot of commanders that create tokens, whether they're drakes or insects like the Locust God or whatever. There's just so many ways to create a lot of creatures in these colors. And flying is not trample, but a lot of people are not going to have a big board of flyers or a big board of creatures that have reach. So in some ways, many of those creatures are going to be unblocked, which is going to get a lot of damage in. So as long as your tokens and creatures have power less than 4, this will pump them and give them flying. So it's like evasion that way. And, the smaller your creatures, the bigger the pump. So if you have 1/1s, then it's like a +3/+3. If you have 2/2s, it's like a +2/+2. So regardless, you're just focusing on having a big board presence and then casting this. Next up, we have Crackle with power. It is $2.65. This is a red finisher for sure. It is a sorcery and it costs XXX red. So that's a lot of mana you gotta sink into here. But the ability says Crackle with power deals 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. So typically, a deck with this is going to focus on explosive mana, where you get like a mana geyser going and you create like 14-15 mana with that, or a ton of ramp going. Because if you're able to sink like 4 mana into the X's, then yes, that's 14 mana, but you're also going to deal 5 times 4 damage, so 20 to 4 targets. So you're going to choose the opponent's face, the other opponent's face, the other opponent's face, and a creature just for fun, I guess. So as you see, it's not very good middle game or beginning of the game, but that's how it is for pretty much all of the finishers. They don't have a lot of utility in the first 5 turns, which is why you're not going to have a huge overwhelming amount of finishers in your deck. Most decks do not have that many. I would suggest probably 5. 5 would be a good number. We have one more, and before that I want to say please hit the like, share, and subscribe button to help this channel grow so more people can enjoy this content, assuming you like this content. Last up, we have Surge to Victory. Surge to Victory is a 55-cent card. It is a sorcery that costs 4 red. It says exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+O until end of turn, where X is that card's mana value. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. So there is a lot going on in this card also. You can definitely win with that pump, giving your creatures +X/+O, assuming you exile something huge like a Treasure Cruise or something like that, where it's got a huge mana cost like 7 or 8, but ways to cast it for cheap. That would be an easy way to give all your creatures a huge amount boost in power. Again, that deck would be focusing on going wide or evasive creatures. The other way this can end the game is with that last ability. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. And you can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So it's very, very possible that you have an extra turn card in the graveyard, and if you only have just a few creatures that get through, that's okay. It does not take too many extra turns to finish a game. I would say probably, depending on your deck, 2 or 3 extra turns is usually going to be enough. And the fact that this card does not exile itself, so red has lots of ways to get sorceries back, play them from the graveyard, and you don't even have to cast that spell in the graveyard. If it's too high of a mana value, red is the color of draw, discard, and discard, draw, so you could toss it to your graveyard without even casting it. You could even do that the same turn you pay this 6 mana spell, because it's just so easy to do in red. So it could be very kind of last minute surprise for your opponents. Even if your graveyard's been exiled, you could still discard that card and then play this, choosing that card. It's, again, the most of these cards do require a board presence of some sort, some amount of creatures or flying creatures or some sort of evasion. And that is it. That is our 5 picks for finishers for part 2. Thanks for watching.